They looked flawless. They lived in mansions, wore diamonds, and smiled like gods under studio lights. But behind the glamour of 1950s, Hollywood was something far more sinister. These weren't just stars. They were ticking time bombs. Some battled addictions so brutal, even their co-stars stayed silent. Others hid truths that could have destroyed their entire careers or lives. And a few simply vanished, leaving behind whispers of scandal and sorrow. Welcome to Vintage Hollywood Files, where we uncover the beauty, the tragedy, and the shadows behind the spotlight. In today's video, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on 5 iconic stars of the 1950s whose darkest secrets were buried beneath fame, fear, and the studio system's iron grip. Are you ready to find out what really happened behind the glamour? And by the way, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. We'd love to know how far these stories travel, because once you hear what these legends were hiding, you'll never look at Golden Age Hollywood the same way again. Number 1. Rock Hudson. He was Hollywood's ultimate leading man. Handsome, towering, and so clean-cut he could have been sculpted by the American dream itself. But behind Rock, Hudson's golden smile and studio-engineered charm lay a reality so deeply buried it would only explode decades later, shaking the entire industry. Hudson's career took off in the 1950s when the studio system thrived on illusions. Universal groomed him into a heartthrob, perfectly masculine, romantic, and, most importantly, straight. But Rock Hudson was a closeted gay man living under one of the most homophobic regimes in entertainment history. In a world where rumors could end careers, Hudson's entire life became a performance. The studio even arranged a fake marriage in 1955 to his secretary to crush growing speculation. He lived in fear, forced to hide his identity, deny his truth, and suppress every romantic or personal connection that didn't align with the image sold to the public. To the outside world, he was the picture of stability. But privately, the pressure to conform crushed him. Friends recalled how Rock lived 2 separate lives, one in the spotlight, smiling for the cameras, the other in the shadows, surrounded by secrecy and shame. The emotional toll was enormous, his self-worth eroded. He battled anxiety, isolation, and constant paranoia that someone would out him and destroy everything he had built. When AIDS entered public consciousness in the early 1980s, it was stigmatized as a disease of shame. So when Hudson revealed in 1985 that he was dying of AIDS, it wasn't just a medical announcement, it was a seismic cultural moment. Suddenly, America's most beloved leading man became the face of a crisis that no one in power wanted to acknowledge. His death wasn't just tragic, it was revolutionary. Hudson's passing shattered Hollywood's long-held silence about homosexuality and AIDS. It exposed the cruelty of an industry that demanded perfection while punishing authenticity. It made the public see the human cost of all the glossy lies. So the next time you see Rock Hudson smile on screen, remember, that smile was hiding decades of fear, heartbreak, and silent resistance. What do you think? Was he a hero in disguise? Or just another casualty of a cruel system? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. Rita Hayworth. They called her the love goddess of the 1940s, the woman who could stop time with a single glance. Rita Hayworth wasn't just a star, she was an icon, a fantasy etched into the American psyche. But for all the men who dreamed of her and all the posters that immortalized her face, the real woman behind the legend was breaking apart. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino, she was forced to erase her roots to fit Hollywood's idea of perfection. Her hair was dyed red, her hairline painfully raised through electrolysis, her accent softened, her name anglicized. Everything that made her unique was systematically stripped away, piece by piece, until she became the projection, not the person. Her personal life was a string of failed marriages, abusive relationships, and desperate searches for affection. She married Orson Welles at the height of her fame, only to watch the union crumble under the weight of his infidelity and her emotional volatility. Later came Prince Ali Khan, whose royal title promised fairy tale salvation but delivered more disappointment. Rita was looking for love in places that only deepened her wounds. By the 1950s, the sparkle had dimmed. Alcohol became her escape. What started as an occasional comfort turned into dependency. Colleagues described her arriving late to sets, forgetful, distant, and at times barely able to deliver lines. The vibrant energy she once carried began to flicker and then fade. She was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's in her 50s, but many in the industry believed her erratic behavior was just the consequence of years of heavy drinking. She would disappear from the spotlight, re-emerge in brief, haunting interviews, and vanish again, each time looking more like a ghost of her former self. By the time she passed away in 1987, alone and far from the glamour that once defined her, most of the world had already forgotten the woman behind the legend. But maybe that's the cruelest part. Hollywood didn't just create Rita Hayworth, it consumed her. So tell me, was she a casualty of her own choices, or a victim of a system that demanded she become someone else to survive? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Number 3. Anthony Perkins. Before he was Norman Bates, he was the boy next door of 1950s Hollywood. Tall, handsome, and disarmingly shy, Anthony Perkins seemed destined for leading man success. But behind those soft eyes and nervous charm lay a lifetime of secrets, repression, and inner torment that even his most iconic roles couldn't hide. Raised by a distant mother and haunted by the early death of his actor father, Perkins grew up longing for acceptance, but terrified of exposure. Hollywood loved his awkward innocence, but the truth was darker. He was a closeted gay man in an industry that punished authenticity. Perkins worked tirelessly to mask who he was, carefully curating a public image while privately battling intense anxiety and guilt. He entered therapy not to find peace, but to cure his sexuality, something he was taught to view as a sickness. Studio executives encouraged heterosexual pairings for press. Co-stars were assigned to him like props. He dated women for the cameras, but behind the scenes, he lived in fear of scandal, humiliation, and career suicide. His inner world bled into his art. When Hitchcock cast him as Norman Bates in Psycho, it wasn't just acting, it was exorcism. The film made him a household name, but it also cemented a reputation that limited his career. Typecast, emotionally fragile, and increasingly isolated, Perkins turned to antidepressants and painkillers to cope. Fame hadn't liberated him. It had trapped him. In the 1970s, desperate to conform, Perkins married photographer Barry Berenson. They had 2 sons, and for a moment, it seemed like he had found balance. But even then, the truth gnawed at him. When he was diagnosed with AIDS in the late 1980s, he kept it secret. Not out of shame, but fear. He died in 1992 without ever fully coming out publicly. Anthony Perkins was more than a brilliant actor. He was a man crushed by a world that told him love was dangerous and being himself could cost him everything. He died admired, but not truly known. What do you think? Was Perkins a prisoner of his time, or a man who made the best choices he could with the cards he was dealt? Number 4. Natalie Wood. She grew up in front of the camera, America's sweetheart with the wide eyes and soft voice. But Natalie Wood's life was never truly her own. Groomed by the Hollywood system from the age of 5, she was taught to smile, obey, and never ask too many questions. Behind the charm and talent was a woman deeply anxious, scarred by trauma, and suffocating under the weight of an industry that sold her innocence while stealing her control. From childhood, Natalie faced pressure no child should. Her mother pushed her relentlessly into stardom, warning her that if she failed, the family would be ruined. As a teenager, she was allegedly assaulted by a major studio actor, a crime that, according to biographers, was buried to protect his image. She never named him publicly, but the damage followed her for life. Wood began to distrust men, fame, and even her own emotions. Despite the pain, she delivered unforgettable performances in Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Splendor in the Grass. But inside, she battled intense anxiety and a deep fear of water, a fear rooted in an incident from childhood and one that would tragically foreshadow her fate. Her relationships were turbulent, especially with actor Robert Wagner. The two married, divorced, and remarried, a cycle of passion, control, and unresolved conflict. On November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood drowned while boating off Catalina Island. She was 43. The events of that night remain murky. Official reports ruled it an accidental drowning, but speculation never died. She had been drinking, the weather was rough, and tensions on the boat between Natalie, Wagner, and co-star Christopher Walken were reportedly high. Wagner's account changed over time. The captain claimed he heard arguing. Fans demanded answers. Decades later, the case was reclassified as suspicious. What happened that night? We may never know. But Natalie Wood's story is one of vulnerability, of a woman who was never allowed to set her own boundaries, who lived in fear and died under a cloud of mystery. In the end, she was more than a star. She was a prisoner of Hollywood's silence. Drop a comment. Do you believe Natalie's death was an accident or something far more sinister? Number 5. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo was once called the Switchblade Kid, a symbol of misunderstood youth in post-war America. He rose to stardom as Plato in Rebel Without a Cause, standing beside James Dean as the fragile, wide-eyed teen who yearned for love in all the wrong places. Off-screen, Sal was not much different. He was sensitive, restless, and living a life split in two, one for the public, one hidden in shadows. Born to Italian immigrants in the Bronx, Mineo's early life was filled with struggle. He found escape in acting, and by the age of 17 he was nominated for an Academy Award. Fame came fast and intense, but it never settled. As the 1960s dawned, his boyish charm faded, and so did the roles. The studios didn't know what to do with him, and as rumors swirled about his sexuality, Hollywood quietly closed its doors. Mineo was one of the first Golden Age stars rumored to be gay at a time when being openly queer could end a career. He never officially came out, but the whispers were enough. Scripts dried up. Interviews stopped. The industry that once hailed him now watched from a distance. Still, Sal fought back. He turned to stage work, took risks, and even began directing. In the 1970s, he landed a role in the play P.S. Your Cat is Dead, and for the first time in years it felt like a comeback. But that second chance was brutally cut short. On the night of February 12, 1976, Sal Mineo returned home to his apartment in West Hollywood. As he stepped out of his car, he was stabbed in the heart by a mugger and died within minutes. He was just 37 years old. The randomness of it shocked the world. But for many who followed his career, it felt like a bitter ending to a life that had been quietly unraveling for years. Today, Sal Mineo's legacy lives on, but mostly in whispers, in trivia lists, in the footnotes of other stars' biographies. And that's the tragedy. He was brilliant, he was brave, and he was broken long before that knife found him in the dark. If you knew Sal Mineo beyond Rebel Without a Cause, what do you remember most about him? Let's honor him properly. Leave your thoughts below. They were icons, legends, the faces of a so-called golden age. But behind those carefully powdered cheeks and dazzling studio lights were real people, fragile, hurting, and often forgotten. We remember their performances, their beauty, their charm. But we forget the loneliness behind the limelight, the silence in their dressing rooms, the battles they fought when the cameras stopped rolling. Today's stars might have social media and therapy, but back then all many of them had was a contract, a mask, and a bottle to numb the pain. If this video made you see these legends in a new light or feel something deeper, don't forget to support the channel by subscribing to Vintage Hollywood Files, where we reveal the beauty, the tragedy, and the shadows behind the spotlight. And before you go, tell us, which story moved you the most and why? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice helps keep their stories alive. Until next time, stay curious, stay human, and never forget that fame always comes with a price.